So the international break is finally over, which means it is the return of me doing my score predictions episodes for the Championship. I'm very excited to do these predictions again. It's been so long since we've had Championship football. Obviously, if you don't know how this episode works, I'll quickly explain. I give you my 12 predictions. I leave them in the description down below so that you can pause the video and look at these predictions. And then you can leave as many predictions as you like in the comments down below. And if you get a correct prediction, your channel will be shouted out in my next Championship review video, which comes out either on Monday or Tuesday, depending on my work schedule. If you guys are excited for football to return for the Championship, please make sure you do give the video a like and share the video. It'll be tremendously appreciated. And make sure you do subscribe to the channel if you want to see regular Championship content. I'm really excited to predict this weekend's footballs. We've got some really cracking games going on. We've got some interesting moves going on from the club as well. Obviously, Cardiff have now got a new manager, Neil Harris, which I'll discuss my views later in the video. But without any further ado, let's hop into some of these games. So we're going to start off with the West London derby, Fulham versus Queen's Park Rangers. What a better game to get Championship football back to life again. I think this would be a really close game. If you look at their last 6 games, their forms have practically been identical. They've both had 2 wins, 2 losses and 2 draws. So they've not had a really good run of form over these last 6 games. Their head-to-head is really edging Fulham to get something from this game. They've won half of their games in their last 6 meetings against each other. With Fulham, I feel like they're almost underachieving a little bit. They've probably got one of the best squads in the whole Championship. Scott Parker, I think, will be under tremendous pressure this weekend. I think he needs to get a response from this Fulham side because they can play good football, don't get me wrong. They play some really attractive football, but they need to make sure that they're clinical and that they're defensively sound. With Queen's Park Rangers, they've started off really well, but they have let their foot go from the accelerator a little bit. They seem to be stuttering a little bit. Defensively, I think they've also been a little bit shaky. So I am anticipating some goals in this game. I'll be very surprised if this ends as a 0-0 draw. Queen's Park Rangers have got some good individual players. Eberechi Eze, I think, will have a fantastic game. I've liked the partnership of Naki Wells and Jordan Hugo up front. I think they've been really important for Queen's Park Rangers so far. I also really like the introduction of Fulham's goalkeeper of Rodak. I think he had a really good season with Rotherham last time, and I think he could be a really promising goalkeeper for Fulham. In predicting this game, it could really go either way because both teams are so capable of scoring, but their defenses both need to improve. I think with Fulham being at home, I might just edge them with a 2-1 home victory, but I think it will be close regardless. With a West London derby, anything could happen. So I'll say 2-1 Fulham. Let me know what you think in the comments. So the next game is the early kickoff on Saturday. It is Charlton versus Cardiff. This will be another close game. I think I'm really intrigued to how this one goes on. With Charlton, they have stuttered a little bit. They've only won once in their last 6 games, which is not encouraging form, especially with how much of a strong start they had in the season. Cardiff, they've also only had 1 win in their last 6 games. Unlike Charlton, however, they have sacked their manager, Neil Warnock. It was almost half expected. I do feel like it was a little bit soon, in my opinion. They probably would have done better with him having at least 2 or 3 more games and then making the change. But maybe this was long term and they planned the change. And a day or 2 later, they announced Neil Harris as their new manager. I mean, he's definitely got the Championship experience with Millwall, but is he right for Cardiff? I'm not too sure. I mean, I think it makes sense in terms of the style of football that they play. They don't play the most pretty football in the world. They play really well to their set pieces, and Neil Harris has done a tremendous job on that with Millwall. But is it the right move for Cardiff going forward and trying to get to the Premier League? I don't think it is, in my opinion. With Charlton, they have looked a little bit fragile from Lyle Taylor being absent for quite some time now. I'm still unaware when he's coming back. With Charlton being at home in the Valley though, I think Charlton do look a really strong side. Obviously they did lose their last game at the Valley, which was against Preston, a game where they weren't really themselves, but I anticipate that this is so tough because Cardiff may have a good reaction under their new manager. But Charlton at home look really strong as well. I think I'll edge Charlton with a 1-0 home victory. But I won't be surprised if Cardiff do get something from this game. I think Neil Harris is going to need to have a bit of time to implement his managerial style into the team. But I think they'll adapt quite quickly because I think they play quite similarly. But now a 1-0 home victory to Charlton does sound about right, I think. A really key game this weekend is going to happen at Pride Park. It is Derby versus Preston. Derby have had a bit of an inconsistent run of form. They win one, then they lose one. They have lost their most recent game as well, which of course was against their East Midlands rival against Nottingham Forest. They're playing a Preston side who are on absolute fire at the moment. They have won 4 of their last 6 games, which is tremendous form from them. However, a real negative for Preston, they have never beaten Derby in their last 6 meetings. Like Reading, which they had at this stage in their last international break, are a real bogey team to Preston. And if Preston need to get promoted, they have to get at least 3 points against Derby, because likes of Leeds, West Brom and Swansea will look at this game and think, we could get an opportunity to make some ground. If Preston are serious in trying to get promoted, they need to get 3 points in this game, in my opinion. Preston so far have not blown teams away, I would say, but what has dramatically improved is their attacking threat, their tempo of the game and their desire. I really like Tom Barkhuizen driving forward with a lot of pace. I think Stockley has done a pretty good job for Preston as well. I think what's been really undermining about Preston so far is how deep their squad is. I remember last year they had a pretty good squad, but it was filtered full of injuries, so they couldn't really field a really strong team in until all their key players got fit again. However, really contrasting from last year, they've got such a good squad, and I say if anyone were to get injured, Preston could fill a real good replacement. But Derby, I think, have improved a little bit. Against Forest, I did see some promising signs, especially in their midfield. I think Bielik and Shinnie are having a bit more of an understanding with each other now. I don't know who they're going to have in front. I don't know if they're going to keep Chris Martin up front, or they're going to get Waghorn out again, or whether they're going to have 2 of them up front. I'm not sure what Koku will do in terms of approaching this game. But I think Koku would see this as an opportunity to kickstart their season and to have a really strong period of 5 games leading up to the halfway stage of this season. I could see Derby winning this game, and I think they will do that by 1-0. I think it'll be a bit similar to the Reading game, where Preston will have chances but ultimately will really struggle to control the game. So I think Derby will nick this by 1-0. But a really key game. It could be a really key game in terms of a title race. So next up is Blackburn versus Barnsley. I think this will be a really tense game. If you look both of their teams' forms, both look like they have relegation forms, with Blackburn only winning once in the last 6 games and Barnsley not winning at all since their first game of the season against Fulham. With Blackburn, they've not even looked that bad, to be honest with you. They've just looked a little bit inconsistent in and around the field. Their last defeat was a 2-1 defeat to Leeds. It is not a disgrace losing at Edinburgh. In fact, they did compete for quite a fair bit in this game. I don't think Blackburn are miles away from being a pretty competent side in the Championship, but they need to be more consistent. They need to have really strong performances, and especially at home as well. What's been really disappointing me is their run at Ewood Park, not making the opposition really struggled to get anything from this game. With Barnsley, I don't know what's going to come with Barnsley. They've still not got a new manager and they need to get one soon. I think a lot of eyes will be on Tony Mowbray in this game. I think if Blackburn starts slow after this international break, I think Mowbray will be one of the next managers getting sacked. And we've already seen over 6 managers being sacked in the Championship this season. So it's fair to say that Championship clubs have been rather ruthless with their managers so far. And in terms of this game, I think it'll be really, really close. I think Barnsley could get something because I do like their attacking threat with Cordy Woodrow. I like the contribution that their captain have in Alex Moat. I think he's quite an important player in that Barnsley squad. However, I do think the experience and maturity of Blackburn will get past Barnsley. And I think Blackburn will have a 2-1 home victory, but I think it'll be a very, very close and a very tight game. The next game is Brentford versus Reading. I am actually really looking forward to this game. If you've seen my last Staxers video, you would know that I graded both of these sides an A+ based on their form, and I've just seen right now why. Brentford have won 4 games in their last 6, and Reading have won 3 games in their last 6. They've got a pretty strong form at the moment, so arguably both of these teams are playing at their best runs of form so far, especially Brentford because they've started slow, but Brentford look like that they can score more goals. They look a lot more dangerous going forward, and Mbumio looks really, really good for me at the moment. Ollie Watkins is starting to adapt to his new role now. I think he's looked a lot better as well, a lot more confident. I think Raya in goal for Brentford has done really, really well so far. I think he's saved Brentford a couple of points so far. With Reading, I really like their midfield in John Swift and Ovie Ejaria. I think both really carry the team. I think the game really does actually shift on whether they both have a good day or not. Ejaria is just such a talent. It really is a pleasure seeing him play for Reading every week. For me, one of the most talented creative midfielders, I say Eze is probably up there as well, but both of them have really appealed to me this season. In terms of a head-to-head, it's pretty equal. Both sides have won twice in their last 6 meetings against each other, so very little to call, but I might edge Brentford being at home. So in that case, I think Brentford will win by, I'm going to say 3-2, a really high scoring game. Mind you, then it'll be a 0-0 draw. You watch. My prediction form has been absolutely horrendous. It's been 2 weeks in a row since I've got 0 predictions right. I need to rectify that and think very carefully, but I just have an instinct that Brentford and Reading is going to be a very entertaining 3-2 home victory to Brentford, but we're going to have to wait and see, but I hope it's a really good game. Next up, we've got a top of the table clash. Bristol City versus Nottingham Forest. 5th versus 6th as it stands at the moment, and whoever side gets 3 points, it could really boost their chances of being in the playoffs for quite some time. But if anyone loses this game, it could really be a dampener whether they can maintain their strong form in getting into the playoffs. With Bristol City, they've been a weird side this season. They've looked good at times, but I say they've received the most shots on goal so far. So for me, defensively, they still need to improve a little bit. Of course, they still got some players injured in that area. I think Bentley has been really important for them so far, and he's been ultimately the reason why Bristol City are as high as they are, in my opinion. With Nottingham Forest, they've been one of the surprise teams of the season so far. I didn't really anticipate that they were going to have a really strong run of form, but they have done, and they have really impressed me. Even though they did have 2 defeats in a row from the last international break, they recovered well from getting that postponed game against Reading, and since then they've won 2 on the bounce. So it goes to show that Nottingham Forest have really improved their mentality, which I think was severely lacking under Ita Karanka and Martin O'Neill. In terms of head-to-head, Bristol City just about edged Nottingham Forest in their last 6 games. They've won 3 times against Forest in their last 6 games. But I do think this is really close. Both have very talented players, with Nottingham Forest having Lewis Graben. I think Semedo for Forest, when he's been playing, I think he's been really good. Thiago Silva for Forest, I think he's done really well as well. Bristol City, I mean, the man everyone's talking about so far is Josh Brownhill. What an unbelievable season he's having so far. Vyman has done really well. His work rate is insane. I'm excited to see Nagy back in the squad. I think he can add something extra to Bristol City that they were severely lacking. I think this game will end as a 1-1 draw. I do have a feeling that both of these teams will cancel each other out, but it would be very interesting if one of these sides wins. But I'm going to be boring and say a 1-1 draw. I'll honestly do anything to try and get a correct prediction correct. So next game is Birmingham versus Huddersfield. A really close game, I do believe. I think with Birmingham at home, they've had a really good home record so far. I think that's been their strongest asset so far this season, which is why they're in or around mid-table at the moment. Huddersfield, well, it's just been a fix-up job for the Cowley brothers, and they've done that miraculously. They're in the foot of the table, but they've lifted them up and propelled them to 19th. They're still not quite safe yet, in my opinion. I think they do need to have a really strong run of form in this period of games to almost confirm that they're going to survive. And I think from then on, if they do have a strong run of form, then they can start climbing up the table and see, you know, maybe potentially they could get close to playoffs. Who knows? Because they are on 16 points, so they're not as far out from the playoffs that most may suggest. It's been really open this championship season so far, so I feel like a lot of teams could enter this playoffs if they have a really strong run of form, that is. Huddersfield have won 3 of their last 6 games, which is why they've recovered really well. Birmingham have won 3 of their last 6 as well, so they are a pretty strong side as well. Although Birmingham have lost 2 in the bounce, which I think is a little bit concerning. But with Huddersfield, I don't know what to make of them. In their last game, they lost 3-1 against Preston, where I feel like they were well and truly beat. It was only until the 70th minute or so when Huddersfield actually grew into the game, which was a bit disappointing on my part. I thought a little bit more of a threat against Preston, but they didn't really do that at all. Last time they actually played each other was actually an FA Cup game, where Birmingham was obviously in the Championship at the time and Huddersfield being in the Premier League. It was a 1-1 draw, but After extra time, Huddersfield had a really rampant performance and blew Birmingham away by 4-1. And that was then and this is now, and I think this will be a really tight game. I think I'll edge Huddersfield for a 2-1 away victory. Continue their very strong run of form. Let me know what you think. Next up is Luton Town versus Leeds United. Now, I think the next 5 games are going to be very, very telling for Luton on how well they may do in the Championship. They've lost 4 games in a row right now, which they need to deal with. They've lost 5 of their last 6. They need to rectify that form and start turning those losses into at least draws, if not wins, because they're in a really precarious position. They're 21st in the moment and only just ahead of Middlesbrough, who are very unlucky for themselves to be in the relegation zone at the moment. With Leeds, they'll be determined to get something from this game. They're 3rd at the moment, but they're chasing Preston and West Brom so far to try and be into the automatic promotion places. And the fact that Preston have got a really tough side in Derby to play, Leeds could see this game as a really big opportunity to try and overtake Preston. Although it could be a banana skin game, because you do remember last time in this stage, after the previous international break, Luton blew Bristol City away by 3-0. I can't see them doing that with Leeds, following how strong their defence has been. I'm really praising the likes of Ben White, Liam Cooper. I've been impressed with Stuart Dallas as well. I think all of their defence has been really, really solid so far this season, including Kiko Casilla. I think he's really, really adapted to the Championship this season. I do think Luton do have the capability of staying up in terms of their attacking threat, but defensively, they need to have a new system in place because they're letting some really, really cheap goals in. And I think what Luton also need to do, they need to start the game really well. I think Leeds will win by 1-0, but I think Luton will not make it easy for them. Luton could potentially sit back, but I wouldn't agree with it being at home that they should do that. I think they should attack Leeds. But for me, I think because Leeds are such a strong side and they're almost at polar ends of the table, I think Luton will sit back a little bit, but I think Leeds will eventually breach through their fragile defence and get a 1-0 away victory. Next up is Stoke versus Wigan. A really interesting game for me, in my opinion. This is going to be Michael O'Neill's first game as Stoke manager, being at the Bet365 Stadium. It'll be very interesting to see how he recovers since Northern Ireland's demolition against Germany. I will say he's done a really good job with Germany. I do kind of feel sorry for Northern Ireland because it was almost the impossible that they were going to try and get ahead of Germany and the Netherlands. They did really well to compete for as long as they did, but unfortunately, Netherlands and Germany just outshone them in quality. But following into Stoke, I think he can have a really good time with Stoke if he introduces a new positive system for them. If he can get players on his side, I think they will play for him. With Wigan, I don't know what to really make of Wigan so far. They have lost 4 times in their last 6, but I feel more concerned by they've only won once in their last 6 games. I think Wigan do need to start winning more games if they want to try and increase the gap from them to the relegation. So they are 20th at the moment, so they're in a little bit of a precarious position. This game last year was a game to forget for Stoke. Wigan ran riot against them and got a 3-0 away victory. Of course, Stoke were down to 10 men as well, but it was the beginning of fans turning on Gary Rowett. They'll be hoping that that doesn't happen the same way as they will do under Michael O'Neill. But I do think there is potential there. I'm not sure how strong they will be defensively, because so far I think that's been their weakest area so far, which you would hardly believe for Stoke if you saw them in the Premier League for as long as you did. With Wigan, I think they've created many chances. They've just not been very clinical. Jamal Lowe has really struggled to adapt to the Championship, in my opinion. I think eventually, if he does get a few goals going, I think he'll score in the rate that he did when he was at Portsmouth, because I think there is a really good player in there. I think he just needs to have his chance. I think this will be a 2-1 home victory to Stoke. I can see Stoke being really, really determined to get a result in this game. I think Wigan will have chances and eventually they will breach through the defence. But I think overall Stoke will just about be strong enough to maintain their lead. So I predicted now a 2-1 home victory to Stoke. What do you think of this? So now we get to Swansea versus Millwall. What has actually surprised me, I've just checked their last 6 games and Millwall have picked up more points than Swansea had in their last 6 games, with Millwall picking up 10 and Swansea only picking up 8. With Swansea, I think they are stuttering a little bit. They've not looked as strong as they were when they maintained a very long unbeaten run in the Championship. I think at home as well, that's actually been their fragility. Away from home, Swansea are undefeated still. With Millwall, I think they're still having the managerial bounce with Gary Rowett coming in. I think they're playing a lot more scintillating stuff now. It's more entertaining to watch Millwall play now. But I've also think Gary Rowett, because with him being a really good Championship manager, he will tactically set Millwall up correctly in this game. I don't think it'll be a game that will be very easy for Millwall. I think Swansea will have most of the ball and they'll dominate in terms of chances. Millwall could surprise Swansea a little bit in terms of their pace in going forward and gaining them on the counter-attack. The lack of goals in open play with Millwall will concern me a little bit. I think they do need to try and develop more goals from open play. I mean, it will be one of those games that Swansea will have many chances, but then you could see Millwall winning by the odd goal to nil with Matt Smith scoring a header. For me, I think this game will be a 1-1 draw. I don't see Swansea winning this game, actually. I think Millwall will be strong enough to deal with them, and I don't think they'll be blown out the park either. I think this will be a very, very good contest, and I think this will be a 1-1 draw in the end. We've got another top of the table clash going on this weekend with West Brom going against Sheffield Wednesday. West Brom so far are currently keeping the longest unbeaten run, not losing in their last 6 games, picking up 4 wins in the process as well, which is why they're doing really, really well this season. They've only lost once, obviously, which was against Leeds. Other times, they've just never looked like they're going to lose a game. They've got so much quality, but what's really impressed me with West Brom so far is a really strong mentality. When they do go behind, they are rampant. They'll make sure they'll get at least a draw out of it. With Sheffield Wednesday, there has been a little bit of a managerial bounce with Gary Monk coming in. It has stuttered a little bit. However, I do think Sheffield Wednesday are a really strong side, actually. A side I think most people are sleeping upon. They are 8th as well. If they can actually get a really good result against West Brom, they could potentially be in the playoffs by this weekend. And obviously, West Brom do lose this game. This opens the door with the likes of Leeds, Preston, even Swansea to try and make up some ground with West Brom as well. But you can't look past their head-to-heads. Sheffield Wednesday have not beaten West Brom in their last 6 games, with West Brom managed to win 3 of their last 6, so they've got a really strong record against Sheffield Wednesday as well. Their squad overall has just looked really, really strong from defence all the way from attack as well. They look like they can score plenty of goals, but they also look like that they're defensively solid as well. I'm going to predict that West Brom win by 2-0, but I think this will be a really, really tight game, and I think a really tense game, because I think Sheffield Wednesday will not make it easy, especially with the quality they've got on Barry Bannon. They've got Forestieri back, obviously. They've got Stephen Fletcher, who's been banning in some goals as well. I don't know who their goalkeeper will be, if they're going to stick with Westwood after he made a couple of mistakes recently. I still think he's number 1 over Dawson. With Dawson, is a bit of a fear watching him, especially dealing with really long looping balls. But I think overall West Brom are just a stronger team, which is why I think they'll get a 2-0 home victory. And I think with that, I think they'll almost definitely cement their place in being the favourite of being promoted this season. And now we've got the final game to go over, which is Sunday's game with Middlesbrough going against Hull. My opinion, must-win game for Middlesbrough, and what's really encouraging, Middlesbrough have a very strong record against Hull. They've won 4 of their last 6 meetings, which could be really, really key for Jonathan Woodgate. So far, it looks like he's a little bit in denial of their situation. They have been quite unlucky, I would admit that. I think he's right about that. But if you look at the stats, they've not had many shots. It's not looking great in terms of stats, and I think Jonathan Woodgate has got a huge amount of pressure on his hands. With Hull, I think they've had a pretty inconsistent run of form, actually. If you look at their last 6 games, they've won 3 of them. They did win their 3 matches 3 games in a row. However, they lost very, very recently against West Brom. A game where I do think they did have chances to try and get a goal against West Brom, but I think West Brom did ultimately control the game and make the momentum go to them. Last year, this game ended as a 1-0 home victory to Middlesbrough. With Middlesbrough, it's just they play some good stuff sometimes. I actually really like what they do in the midfield as well. Ashley Fletcher had a really strong start, I thought, to the season. They've not looked very confident since. I still remember his horrific miss against Huddersfield Town, and that ended as a draw, and that could have set Middlesbrough in a very different position than they are right now. With Hull, you know what their strengths are. They've got so much quality in the wings with Bowen and Krasicki. They've also got Stewart, who's done really, really well for Hull. Tommy East, I think, has also done really well for Hull as well. I think George Long, their goalkeeper as well, has done really well as well. However, I think this game will end as a 1-1 draw. I don't think Middlesbrough are going to have it within them to try and beat Hull. I do think Hull do have the quality to get something from this game, but I don't think they'll win. I think that it will be a 1-1 draw, but I think it will put Woodgate under a lot of pressure, that's for certain. So you have it, guys. Here are my score predictions right there on the screen right now. Do you agree with me? Let me know in the comments down below. But I'll wrap it up. I'm so happy Championship football is back. I don't know about you, but I'm ecstatic. Anyway, if you liked what you see and you're happy that Championship football is returning, do make sure you do give the video a like, a share, and to subscribe to the channel to see regular Championship content. All of that would be terrifically appreciated. Thank you guys so much for watching. You guys are legendary if you saw the end of this video. And as always, take care.